Careful.
We'll roll right out the door.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call of members.
Fraser.
Aye.
Farwell. Here. Clark. Stammel.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Overacker. Bliss.
Aye.
Marietta.
Here.
McCarty.
Here.
Wilbur.
Here.
Koenig.
Here.
Martini. Lappin.
Here.
Shannon.
Please rise. You're able. Pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Well, privilege of the floor. First, Patty Zelma from Otsego County 4-H.
Permission to come forward?
Yes. In today's packet, there's a proclamation for making the week of October 7th to October 13th as National 4-H Week in Otsego County, and 4-H is here to give a brief presentation of some of their work.
Good morning. I'm Patty Selmer. I'm the director of the 4-H program here in Otsego County. Thank you for the opportunity of helping us celebrate National 4-H Week. And first of all, because there's some new faces for me, just want to help bring the connection better together in your mind. A lot of people are familiar with 4-H. Anybody here ever heard of 4-H? A few people, okay. And what do you think of when you think of 4-H?
Young people learning about agriculture and getting involved in the community.
Okay, very good. We're going to expand it, yes.
Forming future leaders.
Yes. Yes, yes. Anybody else? We don't have any buzzers today. Last year, no buzzers today, so what's really exciting for me is to see these young people and volunteers, and you're going to see just a little bit of that today. But locally, we have over 300 members in 4-H. Often people say to me, 4-H, does it still exist? Yes, it very much exists. There's over 300 members here in Otsego County, and we are so fortunate to have volunteers like Sonia, and there's about 150 of them. So, and they participate in different ways, and Sonia's going to share. She's got lots of hats. Some of you may recognize her as Kathy Gelly's daughter. So she's been very involved in dairy, but now she's gone to the dogs. So we're going to hear about the dog program today. So as far as being connected, at the very top, we report to the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA. And then at a state level, Cornell is our land-grant university, but those land-grant universities are across the country. And so we cooperate with universities like West Virginia Tech. Sonia's an alum of West Virginia Tech. And you will see Cornell on much of our information. We're all connected in this cooperative extension. So this morning we're going to have a brief presentation on the 4-H dog science program. And these young ladies are going to tell you just briefly about their project. So Ava, if you want to go.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Ava Lesko. I'm in 7th grade at Cooperstown Central School. I've been showing my dog for about 3 years, and she'll be 3 in December. This is Foxy. She's definitely a mutt, and she's a mix of many, many breeds. And my favorite event to do is we have 4 major events, and that's rally, agility, obedience, and grooming and handling. And she's best at grooming and handling. We went to states last year for grooming and handling, and we won. So that was pretty exciting. And this year I went to states for rally and grooming and handling, and we got her from the Circle of Hope Canine Rescue, and they bring dogs up from Tennessee and kill shelters, and they bring them up to volunteers that they have who foster them, and we got her from someone in town who fosters them. Any questions?
So you don't have to be a particular breed to show your dog?
No, you do not. In professional, like AKC level, which is American Kennel Club, it does, but
Okay, and then we're going to have a presentation by Ava Danka.
Hi, my name is Ava Danka. I'm 14 years old. I'm in 9th grade, and I'm also part of the dog program. I work with my dog, Patty. He's a Shetland sheepdog. He's over a year old. And in the dog program, we learn a lot of different things like positive reinforcement, which is teaching your dog to do the right thing, but letting your dog make that choice for itself, and then treating it, and it's just great and fun for myself and the dog, and it really does teach the dog like how to behave in a human world, I guess, you know. And
So what's that little packet you have there?
this is a dog treat container thing that I got from the dog program, and it's really nice and easy. Instead of like shoving all your sticky treats in your pockets, you can keep them right here, and it's, yeah, really nice. Is there any questions? Yeah?
How long did it take you guys to train your dogs, and especially to perform in front of people? I mean, I imagine they'd be pretty nervous, just like you guys.
Yeah. Well, my dog is still kind of young. He's a really fast learner, and that's the thing with really high energy like dogs, is they learn things really fast, and they learn the bad things really fast, and they learn to get away with things. So it really, the dog program really helped him to see how to do things for treats, and I think I learned a lot in about a couple months so yeah.
Unfortunately, the dogs are not able to be here today.
That's too bad.
Yeah. So, Sonia, if you would just give them a little insight into your experience as a 4-H dog volunteer.
Sure. So my name's Sonia Gawley. I'm from Garrettsville. I've been leading the 4-H dog program. I think this is coming up on my 6th year. And I kind of got thrown into it in a really weird way, but it worked out really well. It's something that I really enjoy. I have Australian Shepherds. They work on the dairy farm with me, so I'm still into cows. I just added dogs to the mix. And the last couple of years, we've really focused on the science behind learning theory. So a lot of 4-H, it's not just about the art of dog training, it's about bringing the science in and making it full circle for these kids. And Ava talked a little bit about positive reinforcement. So we talk about, who developed positive reinforcement and what's classical conditioning and what's operant conditioning. So these guys are learning a lot, the kids themselves, and then they're using that and teaching their dogs in a very practical, hands-on way, which I think has been 4-H's motto forever. Is learning by doing. So the 4-H dog program is a perfect example of that. Classes just began for the fall. We'll have 8 weeks this fall. We'll do a spring and summer session as well, and we're always open for new handlers and new dogs, so everybody's welcome.
Thank you, and I'll do a plug here that Ava, I'm not even sure how Ava came to us, but any young person that's interested in dog obedience is welcome to come. So
You can lease a dog, you don't have to own a dog. And like Ava said, they don't have to be purebred, they can be mixes, whatever you got.
as Sonia was sharing, 4-H is very much a learn by doing experience. And these girls are having so much fun, they don't even know they're learning. So when you think about what they already know, they've already taught how to give commands. They've taught to be, they're learning, teaching how to be patient. They are, they have to know their limits. How much can that puppy do? How much can Foxy do?
Well, and we start the year with goal setting. So at the start of the year, okay, what do you want to accomplish with your dog? Where are you at today? Where do you want to be at the end of 8 weeks? Where do you want to be at the end of the year? Is it your goal to go to states? Is it your goal to win at states? Is it your goal, to get to the county fair? And let's make that realistic and keep that timeline in mind as we progress through the class.
So those of you that are employers are going to be looking for employees. These young people already at the age of 12 and 14 have skills that I wish some adults had. So thank you, ladies. And
quick, what shows do you do other than the county fair and state fair? Are there shows or places where people can go to compete?
We do some demonstrations here and there. We don't really have other show opportunities in the area, but let's see, this Monday we'll be at a harvest festival in Sydney Center, which I know is in Otsego County, but that's where the opportunity is. We've been at Cooptoberfest in the past, but we're not going to be there this year. We have a lot of young kids, so it's going to be too much for them.
Sometimes it's Louisiana, there's some dogs there.
That's Hinman Hollow dog training, so that's adult handlers.
And as Dave is coming, these girls, open your arms please. Besides doing dogs, they do a lot of other things too. Sonia's already working on this young lady with dairy, and we have archery and theater and many, many other opportunities. So, okay, all right.
So Andrew Stammel's the chair of the Health and Ed Committee, which 4-H is under, and so on behalf of his committee and Andrew and myself, we appreciate all the work you do, and very proud to proclaim October 7th through 13th National 4-H Week in Otsego County. Thank you very much for coming.
So if you would be so kind, maybe one on each end. Okay, yeah. Right, and Jim, it was a smile at Jim as well. Okay, thank you all very much. And Andrew is our representative, so I don't know if you want to say just a few closing.
I would just remind, as we go through the budget process, we have an allocation that we do provide the extension. I think it has been $160,000. It actually has been cut back back when we kind of had a more challenging economic time. But I know that Don Smyers, who is the executive director for the extension, has asked for an increase the last couple of years. And as we look at programs like this, it would be great to to see if we could look at trying to support some kind of increase for extension at some point. So.
Thank you very much. I would just mention we did drop off a packet at each of your desks. You've got your 2019 packet calendar ready for you. It fits really nicely in your pocket. The other information that's in there is our annual dinner is coming up. We have a new rack card. Annual meeting is coming up in just a couple weeks. Certainly welcome to join us there. And then this is now our extension publication, Connections, and we are featured on the front with our livestock auction. So thank you very much. Oh, any 4-H alums here? Okay. We are going to have our very first 4-H alum potluck picnic at the New Lisbon Town Hall. So that's on the 14th as a celebration of National 4-H Week. So please join us, and there's going to be good food there.
Patty, just to follow up on what Andrew said, our farmland protection plan we approved last year. One of the things that it showed us was that a lot of in fact, the majority of our dairy farmers are aging out of the business, and they have almost none of them have succession plans, and that to me is a pretty kind of a crisis in this kind of thing. So it's good to see, and I think we need to remember that this is one of the ways that we develop skilled young people to take over those places.
Right. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
No.
He's on a conference call. Sonia, I was supposed to say hi.
Okay, thank you again. Privilege of the floor again, and I'd like to remind you that in consideration for everyone, I'd like to limit to 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
My name is Edward Doyat. I live in the hamlet of Welcome in the town of New Lisbon. First thing I'd like to do is commend the County Highway Department, the wonderful job they did on County Route 14. I mean, they turned out it's a beautiful road to drive on now. The next thing I'd like to bring up is the county manager issue. I know that's going to surface again for sure. Now, it's been in the paper, the school population, it's proven now, it's dwindling, it's going down, people are moving out little by little and everything else, New York State especially. Used to be #1 in population, I think it's #4 now in the nation. You know, people ain't flocking here, they're not running here to get here with the high taxes and everything, obviously. But the whole thing, now, why do we want to grow county government when we have a dwindling population? There's less people to take care of. You know, I know the governor has a lot of unfunded mandates that dump on all of you here, and us taxpayers especially. Address some of those. Let's get the governor to own up to it, and let's get the news media to realize what the hell is going on here. You know, what does it take to get this corrected? We have to start somewhere and get this corrected. There's a total abuse by Albany of all of the smaller communities like us. The last issue I'd like to bring up is with the XNG, you know, transporting the natural gas. Everybody opted out for a pipeline, safest way to transport the stuff. It was demons in the ground. Now, XNG, they're exercising their right to use highways for interstate commerce. Now, plain and simple, look at what is going on and has already been put in town of Oneonta. Right over there, what do you call Reinhardt. They just put in 2 bombs in the backyard there, right smack in the middle of town. There's no uproar, nobody complaining about that. They put 2 60-foot by 9-foot diameter propane tanks there for local propane delivery. I mean, Norton's Gas, when Bruce was turning the business over to his son years ago, I mean, did they locate it over there by the trailer park or anything where Bruce had, you know, has his property, has his business and everything? He still sells the ice there, he sells the 20-pound propane tanks and the whole 9 yards. He fills them up and everything. He kept it to the small scale because of the potential hazards. They located their large tank out in a remote area. There's nothing much there. I mean, you just go along on 205 here, where where they load up the gas trailers all the time, off of the pipeline there, by the way. Years ago, that gas tank that they used to load off of used to be right there next to 205. You had houses and everything, Freddie Hall and everybody else across the road there. What they do, they did the smart thing when they went to put a new tank in, they put it down below, and I believe they put a second one down in there. It's deflected by the contours of the ground itself. If there is a catastrophic explosion, it would be directed out over the valley and over the creek down there. All it is it's farmland down there and basically swampland. They put it in a proper location. Now, everybody complains about these issues, and when it's right in their face, they don't address it unless it's politically correct. I don't know what goes on here. Sooner or later, people have to wake up and straighten things out and fly right. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Agello, and I'm homeless by My anniversary date, happy anniversary, Miss Clark. You and I share this day as the day you transferred my property to Cheryl Sparks without a resolution and created one of the most traumatic events of my life. I get home from work, and there's a tractor in the fields with the horse, troopers banging on my door to have Miss Cheryl Sparks enter my home. I was blitzkrieged. Do you know what trauma is? An emotional shock following a very stressful event, to say the least. No resolution, but 2 months earlier, you had all of these resolutions to transfer properties. Bob Forrest got a resolution, and then you withdrew it. Not this standing board, by the way. I want you to know it was not this board. You know what withdrawn means? Revoke, rescind, remove. That was in June. In August, you acted on it anyway. All of a sudden, you don't need a resolution anymore. All of a sudden, you don't need a vote. What happened to all the properties in 2014? What happened to them? You needed a resolution. It's in your book. I don't see hardly any anymore. In your proceedings. You listed who it was that bought the property. Now we don't know. There's online bidding. We could even be you. I hope not. Because let me tell you what the bidder, Cheryl Sparks, said at the September 14th of 2014. And I will quote, because I remember this. She said, "I bid on her property because I wanted to expand my farming operation." Now that's a business, is it not? "And if you had the opportunity, you would do it too." So tell me, ladies and gentlemen, would you go after your neighbor's property if she was a widow? Would you go after your neighbor's property by keeping tabs on it through the treasurer's office? Would you do that? And making sure that she knew exactly what was going on with me and Dan Kroll had no idea who I was? Would you do that? Would you, any of you, take that opportunity to destroy your neighbor's life, which would mean they'd be your constituents? I found it appalling. Appalling to the point where I couldn't sleep. Do you know what it's like to have the troopers banging on your door demanding entry with the bidder standing on the right, like maybe 10 feet away with him, with the tenant, with the neighbors, everybody? Do you know what that's like? I pray to God you never do know what that's like. But the point remains that I still am asking for my home back. I am still asking to pay my taxes. I was pilloried, just like President Trump pilloried Professor Ford last night at his rally. That's trauma. This is trauma. If it had a sexual element to it, my God, it would have been even worse. But this is a political element to this. It's a constituent element. It's a compassionate element. I came to you asking for relief and for help. And what I got was a pin in the eye. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Joy Sanders, and I also live in the hamlet of Welcome with Mr. Doyat. There's all 10 homes. Anyway, as you can tell, I am a veteran from the Vietnam era, and I'm here to talk about Veterans' Choice. 1 month ago today, I turned myself into AO Fox emergency, And I mentioned to the doctor on call, a very wonderful fellow who went over and above the call of duty and got me the specialized care that I needed in Albany by an gynecology team of surgeons. I was quickly gutted and then found out I had cancer as well. Everything's healing, everything's going great. I'm having a wonderful time getting back on my feet, trying to schedule my chemo with Foxcare because that's what my surgical team suggested. Veterans Choice is not allowing me to continue with that. Veterans Choice wants me to travel an extra 100 miles or so to Albany for the same care. This means not only will I won't have the opportunity to stay overnight and recover from a 4-hour trip at my girlfriend's house in downtown Oneonta. No, I have to stay at a VA hospital in Albany overnight, transport in the morning by the VA van, which I catch at 7:30 at the bus station in Oneonta, go all the way to Albany, get my port in, get my chemo, 4 hours of that, stay overnight, and then catch the VA van back the next day. Probably around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. Another 2 hours to get home after dropping off all the Otsego County veterans that have to go. You know, I'm not the only one. There are other guys and ladies that go too. And instead of just going to Foxcare for a quick overnight at a girlfriend's house, you know, and I'm not allowed to do this because, and the reason given, the VA in Albany can offer these same services to me absolutely free. They don't have to pay a dime. That was the reason. My question is, what is Veterans Choice if it's not the Veterans Choice? Okay? So I am just letting this body know that I am making my way up the food chain in government. And you are my first stop, and I'm going to find out the answer to my question. And I'm going to find out if we can fix it. Because I believe veterans have given their lives to this country, and they deserve what they can get for health care. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. Yes.
May I ask the constituent question? Ma'am, first of all, thank you for your service.
You're very welcome, sir.
Second, if you would please come back and let us know what you find out.
I will do that. I have talked to several people on my food chain of government. Okay, I have already put in phone calls to Bill McGee, to Senator Seward. I've put in phone calls to John Faso, and listened to a line yesterday where everybody was discussing problems and so forth. And he had an assistant that was very, very much in favor of helping me. Also, I still have yet to call Senator Chuck Schumer or Gillibrand. So I'm going to get there one way or another. My son is relocating in the Washington area, so I'll actually have a place to stay. Thank you very much for your time and effort, and I will keep you informed, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Dillingham. I live in Springfield Center. I also am board president of Otsego 2000 here in Cooperstown. I want to talk again about the environmental issues facing this county. First, thank you to Mr. Frazier, who, as head of the Public Safety and Legal Affairs Committee, did write a letter to XNG asking if the XNG CNG trucks could be rerouted and requesting a meeting. I think that's incredibly helpful, and I want to thank all of the members of that committee who signed on to that letter. Thank you, and I hope XNG responds. There's another matter involving compressed natural gas trucks, however, that is now facing our community right in the town of Oneonta. And that is that what happened right after the grant was submitted, that was July 26th, on August 8th, Mr. Zabreski appeared before the town of Oneonta board. And in that meeting, which is video recorded, he clearly disclosed that the project contemplated at Pony Farm is directly and completely interrelated with a separate project contemplated at the Oneonta Rail Yard in the city of Oneonta. This was also disclosed in the CFA application, but it was clear then that this was not a mistake. These projects are interrelated. Now, why do I stress that point? Because those of you who have been involved in city planning and environmental review know that SECRA requires, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, requires that interrelated projects be considered together. So let's look and see what happened with these two projects, both proposed by the same IDA, your IDA. At Pony Farm, no SECRA whatsoever. No SECRA was undertaken. An agency like an IDA, DEC handbook specifies clearly, an IDA must complete SECRA before seeking funding. At least it must be in the process of completing SECRA. It was not done at all. Nothing. That answer is left blank, and we know they didn't do a SECRA. How does that impact the other project, the rail yard project? Interestingly there, a SECRA process is underway. A scoping document was submitted March 6th of 2018. It was adopted by the Common Council of the City of Oneonta on May 15th, 2018. It was submitted to public comment, robust public comment, 2 sessions. Actually, I don't know how many people attended. But here's what's interesting. The scoping document never mentioned the Pony Farm project. Never mentioned the interrelated project. I have been informed, not directly, but indirectly, that Delaware Engineering, the consultants hired by the IDA to shepherd through the rail yard SECRA process and the development of the project, that they did not know about the project at Pony Farm. So what we have here is Town of Oneonta, City of Oneonta, the same IDA in the middle. No one's communicating. No one is disclosing that these projects are interrelated. I hope it wasn't intentional. The public is entitled to know. They're entitled to public comment in the SECRA process. It's like fundamental. It has to be an error, I hope, but it's an error that still needs to be corrected. And you must take steps to correct this error. I believe you must withdraw the application for funding submitted to the Empire State Development Fund because SECRA hasn't even been commenced. And I believe you must reopen the SECRA process already underway in the rail yard with an amended scoping document and an opportunity for renewed public comment. And I understand in that situation already now the draft generic environmental impact statement is almost ready to go without reference to a project that is admittedly connected. And by the way, the CFA application and Mr. Zakarevsky's comments indicate that the Detroiter pipeline expansion is also directly interrelated because the plan is to have a decompressor station where XNG trucks would be brought in on a daily basis to the town of Oneonta to increase gas deliveries by 25% gas capacity for 10 years or more while NYSEG moves to replace the Detroiter. So all of this is all segments of a plan that your IDA is proposing. And you need to understand that and to take steps to make sure that New York law is complied with. I think this highlights why we need an energy committee or some energy planning so that at least the Common Council of Oneonta and the City of Oneonta can communicate, whereby the IDA might communicate with this board, I mean, in a substantive way, so you actually know what's going on. Because you should know if your IDA is proposing 2 projects segmented without considering, even disclosing, that they exist simultaneously. Thank you very much.
Okay.
May I address the board? I'd like to approach the front here and pass out some information from Sullivan County. 5 years ago, they did a new... Yeah, so I'm just dropping one off on the way. There's a bunch of them here, so I don't know if it would cover anybody, but 5 years ago, Sullivan County realized that a 3-person ethics board was totally insufficient. That was 5 years ago. So they've gone to a 5-person board. I believe they may have even updated since then. I would encourage this county to consider who you have on that board, the relationships of the people that are on that board, and get it right when you're doing it. There's a problem here, and the problem is what Maria Agello had said, and this is ethics. Because the problem is we have an employee that has a business, and she further enhanced her profitability from getting a deal from this county, and it was all green stamped ahead of time by our county attorney. Now I notice here that we're this month we have Resolution 256. It's going to be really trying to fix past errors and get out of the liability involved in this in-rem process. It's going to cost $330 per property. That amounts to over $23,000 if it was this year, just to pay this one company. Now, 2 years ago, I bought a property that was valued at $300. That was the assessed value. Properties do sell for $50 at these sales. It's not going to work out. It seems to me you're throwing your money away. You're throwing the taxpayers' money away. Of course, there's a big windfall in these sales to begin with.
Well, that felt nice. Yeah, right.
And we're losing one of our flags here. I wouldn't be surprised if the other went down, because it seems sometimes that this county really has gotten things confused between this board, the legislature, and the judicial system, because there's quite a close tie here. If we're talking about nepotism, without going into details, our county attorney is very well connected with the judicial. And I think that's been part of the problem in trying to get a day in court for Maria Agello, a fair day in court. That just hasn't happened. Now, interesting reading, Representative Stammel very well said that local and county public servants offer their time and energy to serve the community and make a positive difference. Overwhelmingly, these folks do so with integrity. But when conflicts of interest arise, or their conduct is dishonest, unethical, or otherwise contrary to the public interest, they must be held accountable. If improper acts go unaddressed, bad actors will believe the rules don't apply to them and encourages further misconduct. And that's what we had here. It started with Bob Force, the first one that never needed a resolution to take his property, because Betty Ann Schwerd and Don Lindbergh wisely stood up and said, no, we're not going to do this. What happened to Maria should never happen to anybody in this county or in this country. And we're talking about sustainable Otsego. And you're running people like her out. And people like Robert N. Conley, who I talked about last month, who me unknowingly had not known that he had died, I believe, 5 days prior to me talking here. I think he's probably almost a neighbor of yours, Representative Frazier. And to read his obituary was the most heartbreaking thing that I've ever seen. I didn't know him. I just wish somehow, through our VA connections in our county, or me and my work as an adult services person, that we could have found a way to somehow help this man who lost his home, who 2 weeks later was dead in that home. Now I have in my hand today Ken Agello's dog tag. A very sad thing, Maria's late husband. And she nursed him with cancer in that home until the moment he died. If you've never done that, maybe you should, when you have a chance or you really need to, or if you lose your spouse, consider where you would be if your husband died in such a way and you nursed them to the last breath. Would you be the same person? Or would you really come to know what living is about? And this is what it's about. 33 years of hard work and saving for the only home they ever had. And you would take this away from a widow of a Vietnam veteran that was decorated. May God have mercy on us all. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Don't worry, I'm not going to read this, okay? My name is Ronald Barton, Ron, as I go by. I was born in Fox Hospital, grew up in Oneonta, lived in the county my whole life except for 4 years in the military. I spent over 25 years with the New York State Department of Transportation as a motor vehicle inspector in our commercial vehicle enforcement unit, the original commercial vehicle enforcement unit. I'm here to discuss the problem right now. I'm going to make it really short with XNG, okay? Before I retired, for many years, I worked with local police departments. Now, Otsego County Sheriff's Department I worked with quite a bit. Anybody that ran through the town of Oneonta might remember old Route 205 I used to set up there with Deputy Stan Cade on occasions. We worked up in Pittsfield, we worked up in Cherry Valley, we covered the whole county, and doing the inspections on these roads was very successful, okay? And it took a lot of unsafe trucks, a lot of unsafe drivers off the road. I retired in 2014, so it's been about 4 years. I ran into the sheriff back in August, and we were discussing the XNG problem. And the first thing I asked him was, are you still interested in having a deputy trained to do like what I was trained to do? It's the same school. And he said, it's the same thing as it was back when I worked with you, I just didn't have the manpower, okay? So I asked him, I said, what's your plans, you know? He said, I would like to have somebody, and it would help, you know, it would help this XNG problem, because there is nothing done on this corridor where these trucks are going. And he said, I'm going to ask for additional patrol positions in the budget. So I said, would you like it if I went up and spoke to the county board about the positives of having somebody trained? And he said, yeah, if you'd like to. And I was going to come last month, but I was waiting on an inspection report to come back from the accident that was up in Exeter, the rollover, okay? And what this book contains, all right, my resume's in there, okay? I'm very proud of it. I've done a lot of other things. I was a pit road official and inspector for NASCAR part-time for 6 years, okay? It explains the Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program is federally funded, what its purpose is. Okay, the state gets the grant from the federal government. All right, the New York State DOT is the lead agency. They hand the money out to an additional agency that's in the state to do this work. And they also support software and training for local police departments that want to send somebody through this training. Okay. The reason why I say that I advocate for this is that, believe it or not, you've got sheriff's deputies that have some mechanical ability, okay? The one that I worked with before I retired could take a farm tractor apart and put it back together, okay? And that was Stan Cade, all right? So you would at least have somebody with some kind of mechanical ability that would do the complete inspection. The problem right now with the state of New York is the complete level 1 inspection is not important for some reason. I did that my whole career, okay? And this book will explain the different levels of inspection, the out-of-service criteria, the things that you're gonna find on the truck that would actually park it, right? You know, as opposed to a level 2, which is a walk-around. That's what seems to be the norm here. those statistics are in here, okay? The federal fiscal year 2017, because 2018 just ended, and I'm sure the data's not up to date. But you'll see that New York is not serious about level 2s. Their out-of-service rate for level 1s is very high. And I took the other state that mirrored what we did when the program first started, and that's California, and I put in here. California hired the mechanics to do the inspections. They didn't hire police officers to do them as a broad thing. You know what I mean? The police officers generally don't have much mechanical ability. But they hired them, and you'll see in the out-of-service percentage that California is very successful, which our program was in the beginning when it started in the 80s. Now, to go into one other thing, there's the laws and the regulations, the laws and the state regulations are in here that give the police officer the authority to stop the trucks. I put everything in here. XNG, I got their documentation in here. I can tell you from my point of view, and I'll say this, and I'd say it right to their face, they're not a safe carrier, okay? They are not a safe carrier. They don't have a safety professional on the payroll, and a safety professional would probably tell them to take the trucks off this road, and the reason why is we're having too many accidents there. There's too many hills on there for these natural gas powered trucks that it's slowing them down. Somebody knowledgeable with XNG would take those trucks off the road and they put them over on the interstate. Okay, I almost guarantee. I worked with safety professionals. I worked with hazmat shippers for over 25 years. So, but I want to give this to the board chair. You can look through it. If there's any questions, my phone number, my email address is right on the front here. You can call me. The accident documentation from XNG, and I'm going to say this, I was waiting, the accident reports now, the MV-104s have to go to the federal government, the ones that the police officer fills out at the roadside. They're in here, the general one that's available on the website, along with all of their inspection reports. I printed them all out here. Everything is labeled. You can see just exactly what's going on. And I put that accident in here, all right? And I had to wait for the accident report, like what we filled out on the roadside, under FOIL. And to be honest with you, the person that did the inspection, he wrote the wrong violation down for the package being damaged. And what that would have done was, is if I'd have done it, or somebody that was probably a little more versed in hazmat, would have recorded the correct violation, and that probably would have sent a message to Pipeline Hazardous Material Safety to suspend or revoke the permit, the special permits to use these containers to haul this compressed natural gas. And I included the special permits for both companies that build them here, along with the regulations. I've highlighted the regulation in there, and you only have to go to the end, towards the end of it, and you'll see where it says that the things are not met in the special permit, they're subject to revocation or suspension. So I just want to know that I'm available if you decide to have a meeting with XNG and you want somebody that's in the know to be at that meeting. I'm offering my services. Okay? You can call me anytime during the day except for, I think between 10 and noon I go to the gym, and between 3 and 4 I watch Judge Judy.
That's great.
Yeah, and like I said, you can call me. I know some of the people. I know Danny and Dan. Maybe some of them don't like me, but. And by the way, I spent over 25 years encouraging trucks to take an alternate route. Just remember that, okay? The complete inspection and parking a truck for brakes, where it either has to be towed or it has to be fixed on the roadside, is very discouraging to a motor carrier, okay? Changing a flat tire or a light bulb while doing just a level 2 is not very discouraging, okay? They're going to keep right on running, all right? But it's when you get them with the defective brakes and everything like that, where they have to be disassembled. I mean, we've had. I can remember one time a local company, and I'm not going to mention their name. Their dump truck sat over there in Butternuts in the little parking area across from the school. All the tires were balled on it. They had wooden blocks it was sitting on. They took all the wheels and tires off. They had new tires put on. That's the only way you're going to discourage a carrier to use a different route. Okay? is you have to, and these XNG trucks down in their Forest Lake where they load is a very dirty area. And dirt is the #1 cause for defective automatic slack adjusters for the air brake system. That's the worst thing is dirt. And they're in a very dirty environment. So I would not doubt, but what they're out of service, which is in there, would definitely climb if complete inspections were done on their trucks. And the county board could dictate through the sheriff's department that this deputy is going to do a certain amount of level 1 inspections. He'd be able to print it out from his computer every month, and it would be given to the board to say this is the activity. Because I used to do that with Sheriff Devlin with my reports. You know, what I did, I used to do stuff, and he always got a copy of my inspection report. So the board would definitely have a control over, you know, the quality of the work. So, anyway, that's it. I'm done.
Anyone else?
Sounds like a plan.
That was good.
Approval of minutes of the September meeting. Second? All in favor? Presentation of petitions.
I have the Alternatives to Incarceration Program Services report rendered by Catholic Charities for the month of August, and I also have a letter from a concerned employee about security at the 242, which I already sent you all via email.
Thank you. Three special presentations today. David Diaz from Land Trust. Yeah, whatever you'd like.
Well, good morning, everyone. And on behalf of the Otsego Land Trust, I want to thank Chairman Bliss and everyone from the County Board for being able to put us on the agenda today from the Otsego Land Trust. I'm Patricia Zarba, I'm the Executive Director, and I'm with David Diaz this morning, our Land Protection Manager. And we're here for a few different things, a few little goals today. First being, and just the continuing theme, we are a land protection organization, of course. Farmland protection is one of our main goals here in this county, especially one of our main initiatives we're going to be taking forth in the next several years. So we highly support, and we've sent a support letter and want to make sure that you as a board understand the importance when your budget time comes for the Ag Implementation Specialist. We work closely with the Ag Implementation Committee that is here, and the fact that this updated Ag Plan, we are thrilled with the fact that that was updated and passed last year. This is an agricultural county, an agricultural county that you know should relish it. And I think the opening of today's meeting kind of helped me to understand too that it's what are we doing, what we do, you know, in our organization and what all of you do, and it's for the future. And we see where some of our future is, and it is truly in our agricultural world, 4-H, and so these young folks, we hope they stay here. Clearly. And that's one of our goals. One of our goals is to make sure that you understand, you know, that support and how important that position is in your budget. Number two, we're going to talk a little bit, and David particularly, about conservation easements. And there's a lot of misnomers and a lot of questions that come up, and what does that mean? And so David will be able to dispel some of the rumors and give you some of the true story on there. And number three, we want to just inform you about steps that we are taking along with our partners, with our Ag Implementation Committee, with Karen Sullivan, with our entire group of partners in this region to look seriously, and we've already started to take action on the FPIG dairy farm work that Governor Cuomo has ascended down with $30 million available for the state, the RFA that's available. So we are working within our region to actually work with one of our dairy farms here. So David will give us a little bit more information on that. I'm going to walk you just through a little bit here. Just as a reminder, we are part of the larger picture. We are part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Very important. So whatever land we are protecting, whatever waters we are protecting in our region that we serve is part of this larger picture. We are at the headwaters, so everyone below us is affected by what we do. So, you know, keep that in mind. We are not just an individual place in a vacuum here in our county. And the regions that we serve, the Otsego Land Trust serves not only Otsego County, but its surrounding counties, Delaware, Chenango, Madison, Oneida, Herkimer, and Schoharie. We have bits and pieces as we spill over, as that watershed spills over, and as lands that are surrounding, because our lands and waters don't know borders as we do, as man-made borders. So we have a service area that's really do our best to try to, again, inspire the next generations to do our work and continue. This is a special view too. We are on Federally Forest, which is one of our public access beautiful trails on this place, overlooking the Otsego Island, a property that we also manage and own for public access and enjoyment. And so you kind of get a 2-for-1 in this photograph, but it just gives you a sense that we are here for the public as well. And this gives you just a brief view of the properties that we do own for public access. Otsego, Federally Forest, Oaks Creek. We have Crave, those are by water access. Parslow Road Conservation Area, hiking trails, water access, fishing. Brookwood Point, of course, many of you know for a variety of enjoyment, and it's an amazing property with 22 acres of just about everything on it you could possibly think of. And Greenough Road, which is paddling and hiking access, and Compton Bridge. So we have, over the years, managed these for public enjoyment. Our work is to connect people to the land. The land and waters of our region are for everyone. They know no boundaries. They know no political boundaries. And so we want to make sure that we continue for the future. A lot of these, and we rely heavily on volunteers. We also have a wonderful educational program in the summer, environmental studies team, and get children out from high schools out to do water quality studies. And the variety of habitat that we take care of. As I said, the focus today being on conservation easements with private landowners, as well as, picture to the left, some of the farmland work that we are initiating. We've done some private farmland protection work, but now we are kind of moving forward fully in accessing some of the dairy farm dollars that are available through the RFA, through Governor Cuomo, as well as looking toward 2020 for the opportunity to take part in the State Ag and Markets Farmland Protection Program, the next round of grants that will come out of that department to protect farmland in our region. And that is not specific just to any type of farm like the dairy one is. That's to a farm that we'll be working with and identifying. Lots to, a lot to look at there, a lot of qualifiers. Okay, and I'm going to turn over to David, who is going to run us through what a conservation easement is. And again, pay attention to the rumors and the misnomers. And here we go.
Thanks, Pat.
You're welcome.
I've been working for the Land Trust for a little over a year now. I came from the Finger Lakes region. I was working for the Finger Lakes Land Trust over there out of Ithaca. And I've been doing this kind of work for quite some time. One of the things that I've noticed over time is that conservation easements are just a confusing idea. What is it? What's it all about? So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. And I've heard a lot of things, and so I'll hit on a few topics. So a conservation easement essentially is a legal document that gets recorded in the clerk's office. They're normally called a deed of conservation easement. So they are a deed. But they're not a deed of ownership. You don't own the land. The land trust doesn't own the land. What the conservation easement does is it sort of essentially is putting restrictions on development and various uses of the property. Now, those restrictions and the development restrictions are done in consultation with the landowner. The landowner is always a willing landowner. They don't have to do a conservation easement with us. So that's another main thing. It's always with a willing landowner. So there's a few things about the conservation easements. So there's a few different kinds. They all essentially do the same thing, but the way that you get there can be different. Some people donate a conservation easement. Some of them are purchased. Some of them are partially purchased. So there are these different ways that we're able to protect land with the same type of document. The Department of Ag and Markets programs that Pat was talking about are partially purchased conservation easement programs. So in those situations, New York State's providing funding in order to purchase conservation easements, but it's only a portion of it, 75 to about 87.5%, and I'll explain what that means in a little bit. Again, recorded in the county clerk's office, just like any other deed would be. So some of the fiction things that go out there with conservation easements are very understandable because it's just confusing. It's called a deed, and there's a lot of things that have happened over the years. Conservation easements in the 70s and the 80s and in the 90s are not the same conservation easements that we have today. They've progressed and evolved considerably. So one of the first things that you always hear is that when you do a conservation easement, the land trust owns the land now. Well, it doesn't own the land. The landowner owns the land. The landowner can sell the land, lease the land, all sorts of other things. And do all sorts of things that are consistent with a conservation easement, which usually means limited development, agriculture, hunting, fences, all sorts of things. The kind of things that normally landowners would do. The public can enter your land. Conservation easements do not give the public the right to enter your land. If that's part of the conservation easement, say there's a public trail, a Finger Lakes Trail or the Appalachian Trail or something like that goes through a property and the landowner wants to allow public access for that purpose, that could go into a conservation easement, but the majority of them don't have anything like that. Conservation easements have to be forever wild. You can't do anything on them. You put an easement on and now, well, it has to be a field or it's got to be forest and wetlands and that's it, and you can't use it. That's not true either. The majority of conservation easements today, like I mentioned a little bit, just a little previously, allow for some amount of development. Land trusts, I mean, we understand that landowners need some amount of flexibility. Most people are not in the position to have 50, 100, 200,000, whatever it is, acres, and never be able to do anything on it. It's just not reasonable. Most people need to be able to have that either as a safety net or it's just part of their financial planning in the future or what they're passing to their kids or all of those kinds of things. So there is a limited amount of development that will be allowed in most conservation easements, and that's done through talks and discussions and getting to understand the property and what the landowner needs and what their family needs, and together we figure out what that means for the conservation easement. Probably the biggest one is that a conservation easement takes land off the tax rolls, and that's not what happens. There are two tax incentives that are available for conservation easements. One is a federal tax deduction that's based on donating the conservation easement. The conservation easement has value because the landowner is giving up certain ability to do things on the property. That has actual value, and our federal government feels that that's, when somebody's foregoing those things for public good, that you're doing something for the public good, and so it's a donation just like somebody giving a painting or something else. The other one is the New York State income tax credit, and that's related to property taxes on the land itself. So what happens there is New York State says that whatever you pay in property taxes on your land, not houses, not structures, but on the land, you can get up to 25% back to a maximum of $5,000 per year. That's coming from New York State. The landowner still pays their tax bill to the town, school district. They're still paying their tax bill. On their income taxes, what happens when you do an easement is we submit to DEC, they give you a number. That number goes on your income taxes, and you staple your tax bill, and then you get 25% of what was on the taxes on the land. And we're not tax professionals, but that's how it works. So the town is still getting its tax bill met. The county, all those things are still happening. This is coming from New York State, and it comes from the Environmental Protection Fund, which really has its roots in recycling soda bottles, things like that. Those 5 cents, there's this huge fund, and that's one of the purposes for which it's used. So it doesn't hurt your tax base. We already talked about you can't build anything. Another one is you have to protect all your property. You don't necessarily have to protect your entire property. We can do conservation easements on a portion of someone's property. Now, that's always going to be situation dependent, and whether or not what's envisioned by the landowner happening on the other part of the property, if it's completely inconsistent with our mission, we may not be able to move forward with an easement. But we discover that together as we're talking. But you don't necessarily need to protect all your property, and a landowner shouldn't be embarrassed or sad if they're like, you know what, I really can't do an easement on the whole thing. That's part of the discussion. It's okay. And the last one is that a conservation easement can never be changed. Conservation easements can be amended. It's rare and it's reserved for very specialized situations, but it's not that they can't ever be changed. There are reasons why it might be necessary to fix something in a conservation easement. It's always situationally dependent and it's very rare, but it is possible, and in every conservation easement that we do, there's an amendment clause, and it talks about some of the reasons why one might happen and what bar needs to be met. So, just a few facts, quickly. Conservation easements, the ones that we do, the ones that you'll see in a lot of the country, are perpetual. So, they go on the property forever. We're humans, what does forever mean? We don't know, but in a legal sense, it's forever. There are costs for doing a conservation easement. One of the biggest costs is the cost of our management of the easement. We're required to monitor conservation easements every year, at least once annually. And what we do is we call the landowner and say, hey, it's time again, we gotta come out and walk the property. And usually we walk the property with the landowner, and it's kind of fun. And the idea behind that is that to make sure that, you know, we joke about it, somebody can build skyscrapers and, you know, those kinds of things. But most of the time it's really just kind of a fun outing with the landowner, and you just talk as you're walking. So that's something we have to do forever. We also have to be able to defend the conservation easement should somebody in the future decide, well, I don't care, land trust, I got deeper pockets, I'm going to do whatever I want. We have to be able to defend it in court if we had to. So we have to have money set aside for that purpose. So that's kind of the biggest cost for us. And for a conservation easement, we're often asking the landowner to help us with covering that cost. Landowners aren't always going to be able to help us. And so we are able in many cases to try to figure out other ways to meet that requirement. And because we're accredited, we have to do this as well. So we don't even have a choice. Some of the other costs, there's something that's called a baseline documentation report that's built. It's this really amazing compendium of photos and descriptions of the habitats and maps and everything else that landowners, I think, besides knowing that their land is going to be conserved, they get this amazing thing about their property. That how many people have something like that just describes everything. Soils and all the conditions and where things are and everything. It's just a really neat document. And then there's recording costs because it has to go to the clerk's office and get recorded. There's title review and all sorts of other things that we have to do in order to make sure that the conservation easement can be put on the property. And so, you know, all those things add up. And what we're looking at when we're going to do a conservation easement, we know there's going to be a total cost of somewhere between $6,500 and $8,000, probably. And it can be more depending on the size of a property. And so we're always talking with landowners from the beginning about those costs, and that's part of the discussion. Well, how do we get there? The land trust has the ability to do some fundraising, definitely, and in some cases cover costs completely. And in other cases, we don't have a funding stream to help. And so we may have to wait. We may have to figure out how to get there if a landowner is unable to help us. And most people can't, of course. It's just a huge amount of money to expect anybody to donate something. And so we understand that. You know, one thing, I talked about tax incentives and the monitoring of the easement. You know, conservation easements aren't for everyone. You know, well, there's nothing wrong with just having a discussion. It doesn't mean that there's any commitment made by a landowner. We understand they're not for everybody. Not everybody wants to do something like this. It doesn't work for their family, it doesn't work for their financial situation, their business. There's all sorts of reasons not to do it. They like the idea, but it just isn't feasible, and we understand that too. But discussion's always worth having, at least in our opinion. So I'll go very quickly. I mentioned this before, but there are a number of things with a conservation easement that a landowner can do, and these are just some of the representations. Forest management, so timber harvesting, things like that are permitted. In a conservation easement, that typically is going to require a forest management plan, which any landowner is going to want to have done anyway to make sure that it's done properly and the woods aren't wrecked when it's done. Things like hunting, the key is development. Some amount of residential development can be permitted. And often there's an existing home as well. And so some additional building may be permitted as well. Agriculture of all different kinds are permitted. And then, of course, other kinds of outdoor recreation and uses are permitted. And other kinds of structures as well, recreational structures. There's a bunch of things that people just normally do on their properties that are not destroying, the things that you're trying to protect. They're just normal things that people do. So I'll add one more thing about benefits. There can be sometimes estate tax benefits because a conservation easement essentially lowers the fair market value of the property. So the conservation easement has value. And so based on an appraisal, what would the value of the property be without any conservation easement on it? And then the appraiser then says, well, what would the value of the property be with the conservation easement on it? And the difference between those two is what kind of the value of the conservation easement is. And so that can have some implications for when properties are being handed over from generation to generation, because the fair market value gets reduced, so that the possible estate tax bill is going to be less because of that. So it can help for that generational transfer, where a lot of times people are faced with the idea of, well, I got to cut off pieces of the property and sell it because we can't meet these estate tax problems. And those numbers keep going up and down, and it's hard to follow. But it can be part of the picture for a lot of people. So just again, the takeaways. Easements are perpetual. It's protecting natural resources, farmland, scenic areas, but also they can also look at historic structures, historical areas. Typically, the land trust is not getting involved in historic structures. That's a whole other kind of expertise that we don't do. Again, the documents are developed in cooperation with the landowner. It does not take land off the tax rolls. There are tax incentives that can be available, and the landowner and the land trust are partners, and then partners after that as well. And so I think that's it. So if anybody has any other questions, you all have a brown folder in front of you. Unfortunately, I didn't put stickers on the outside so you would identify us, but there's a lot of information in there, including this presentation. There's information about conservation easements, tax incentives, a number of different topics. And also, I wanted to mention a couple of other things. So Pat had mentioned this dairy farm program that's from the New York State Department of Ag and Markets. They made available $30 million statewide. For our region, we're the eastern region, which there's 17 counties in the eastern region, there's $5.7 million available. It got split up amongst the different regions at $30 million. That money is available to purchase conservation easements on dairy farms that are in transition. And what that means is right down here, there's these three categories. The next ownership of a continuing dairy, but whose operation has been modified to ensure greater financial sustainability. These are the exact words from the state, so I'm trying to make sure I read what they're saying. The second is a more diversified overall farm operation while continuing, at least in part, as a dairy. And then the third is the dairy's transitioning into a totally different type of farm operation. So New York State's kind of recognized that there's obviously a crisis in the dairy industry, primarily based on milk prices, but there's a lot of other reasons. And so they decided that they really needed to make a real focus on this. So what we're doing right now is we're working with various partners and also through the Ag Plan Implementation Committee to identify a dairy farm in Otsego County that is eligible, and there's a lot of other eligibility requirements. This is a very extensive, involved program in order to get to the point where you're doing the conservation easement and getting funding from the state. So it takes some time and it's very involved. But we're looking to identify a farm in Otsego County to apply for funding to this. And those of you, there may be people that are aware of the regular New York State Department of Ag and Markets program where they purchase conservation easements. That's the normal one. That one is competitive statewide. So you submit an application and you're going up against the entire state. This is an RFA, it's a request for application. As long as there's funding, you submit an application, you meet all the eligibility requirements, and there are a lot of them, but you meet all of those, and then you start going through the process. As long as there's money, you're going to get awarded the money. So we're working quickly, fast. We've reached out to a lot of areas and continue to reaching out to more. The questionnaire is in your packet as well, just so you can see it. This is a preliminary questionnaire. Again, there's a lot more information that will need to be gathered later as we start to vet questionnaires as they come in. Lastly, and I'll get out of your hair here, the Ag Implementation Specialist position has been mentioned, I think, 2 or 3 times now today. I can't stress enough how important this position is for agriculture in this county. We have a plan that we just approved last year. This is one of the big items in that plan to get, because it leads directly to addressing other items in the plan. We have a lot of agriculture in this county. We have a huge opportunity to really start to, well, grow is probably whatever, but to grow that even more, to really be substantially supportive, more so than we've already been. And I think there's a real opportunity for that position to do a lot of great things and also help be a partner in these state programs where there's lots of money available to do actual farmland protection, and it helps farm operation. If you help a farm operation, you're also helping all the support mechanisms that are helping to support that farm as well. So all the people that do all the mechanics and the fixing and all those things, you name it, it's helping a lot of other industries that are in this county as well. So this position is really important, and I'm just hoping that we'll be able to get it reallocated for more funding and continue on the work that Shannon Kirch did. So, thank you.
Any questions? Well, we thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we have Jody, who's the first one. Let's see what happens.
Everybody says I don't know really briefly, at the IGA meeting, they asked me to make a brief presentation to this board about what we do at the IGA. And Otsego now is an umbrella organization. It's basically a marketing name. It's basically 3 different organizations. One is the Otsego County Industrial Development Agency, which primarily works with manufacturing and businesses. The Otsego County Capital Resource Corporation, which has similar functions as an IDA, but really works with non-for-profit organizations such as hospitals, the Hartwick College, things like Springbrook. And then we have a third organization called the Oneonta Rail Yards Industrial Development Agency, which was created last year just for the purposes of the industrial park proposed in the city of Oneonta. Everybody should have a copy of this on your desk. I wanted to have something that you can take with you. And it's really just highlighting what we've been working on for the last year, the last 8 months. In 2018, the following studies: the Upper Susquehanna River Agricultural Study, the Richfield Springs Comprehensive Plan, and the Village of Cooperstown Comprehensive comprehensive plan were officially completed, submitted to the state, they were approved, and our agency was reimbursed $367,000. Why that's important to reference in the beginning is that for the last 4 years, our agency has been run in somewhat of a deficit. Actually, it has run in a deficit. So this is, we're projecting our first year, we're actually going to be in a positive cash flow. And that was very important for us to start recouping some of the monies we've laid out for some of these studies. On page 3, probably the biggest issue that we're dealing with right now is the Oneonta Rail Yard redevelopment. That's a project that was started in 2017, where we acquired the property. We did hire Delaware Engineering to prepare a generic environmental impact statement and to start initial site plan review. That project is actually, the scoping session and everything is being approved and supervised by the city of Oneonta. We're just paying for the study. It's actually the cities of Oneonta that's actually conducting that study. We expect it to be complete in the spring of 2019, and they just finished their wetland delineation, which is a big issue for us, because that really dictates what's available on that site for future development. And the reason that got delayed so much is because of the inclement rainy season we had this year. We just couldn't get out and do that. We did hire Eland Planning to update the city's master plan, and we're working with North Fork Southern also to look at various site plans that they would consider. Also in 2018, Otsego now was lucky enough to get Census Tract 5911 designated by the state as an opportunity zone. That's a very important, lucrative new federal tax program that basically says anybody who invests in a opportunity for standby generators and voltage regulators. And they've been actually funding that out of their own funds right now. On page 11, it'll go through all of the organizations that we've met. We met with Renewed Energy, a solar development company, Northfield Energy, an LNG provider, Revolution Solar, Northeast Wind Products, Pro Wind, Natural Force Wind Developers out of Canada, Ensign Fuels, which is an oil from recycled woods producer, Energer, which is a liquid natural gas provider from Canada, Green Energy Corporation, Solstice, and Delaware River Solar. In addition to that, since I put this together, I've had 3 or 4 conversations yesterday with General Electric. They're having their teams come down to talk to me tomorrow about some of their options. And probably the most important thing in red in here is we really welcome and encourage the county to take the lead in developing a countywide energy plan and implementation plan. Our office should not be the energy people for the county. And we really hope that your board, with the leadership of Michelle and Peg, can really hold us together. The Oneonta Business Park. In 2017, it was deemed shovel ready. Went through also a comprehensive generic environmental impact statement. These sites are pre-planned. The benefit of that is in December of last year, we were approached by Tenter. Within 3 months, they were in operation in that business park because it was already pre-approved. We are still working with a company trying to expand their operation. They're still looking at a 40,000 square foot facility. Negotiations are ongoing on that. We're identifying some different issues with the energy that we're trying to resolve with them. On page 13, and I kind of point this out because there was some concern at the IGA meeting, at the Oneonta Business Park or the Pony Farm Park, there are currently 10 occupied buildings in that industrial park. Only one right now is owned by the IDA, the rest of them have been sold off to private individuals, private businesses, and there are only 3 sites available left in that park. Because everybody says, well, you got all that property there. Roughly 2/3 of it or 3/4 of it have already been developed and sold off.
Jody, are those the ones that are owned by the county still?
There are.
That are left? There's three less that are owned by the county, I believe.
The IDA, county IDA.
Okay, well, according to the tax map, it's actually the county, but I'm a little confused about that, but okay. All right.
One of the other big issues that we had this year, and it took us 4 months to negotiate this with Corning, was Corning is doing an $11 million expansion in Oneonta at this present time. The IDA ultimately approved a 15-year pilot agreement, which is our standard pilot agreement. We did not deviate from our standard pilot. We also approved a sales tax exemption to Corning for their construction. New York State, Empire State Development did approve a $1 million grant toward their expansion. And basically the company has agreed to keep 175 jobs here for the next 15 years. They really did not want to, we had a series of, like I said, 4 or 5 months of negotiation on this. It wasn't easy with them. On page 17, also in 2018, Otsego now applied on behalf of the town of Oneonta for a $750,000 community development block grant for a $2.2 million expansion. The company is looking at developing a production of a new smart battery system. And basically what these batteries are is they recharge themselves, and they're mainly used in disaster areas where you have to bring lighting systems in, and they have to be brought in on batteries as opposed to being able to plug into the wall. They're also, interestingly enough, used in movie sets. When they say, let's move the stage over here, let's get it, they have to have electricians come in and rerun the wires. So these now lights are being designed so that they can be used in portable movie sets. As part of the expansion, the company over the next 2 years would add another 50 manufacturing jobs. And we're working on a press release on this project for this, probably on Friday. So we're pretty excited about that. In 2018, 2 of the projects that were stalled for a couple of years are finally up and running. One is the 205 corridor study. That's being undertaken by Delaware Engineering. Our agency is spending about $40,000 on that. And the Oneonta Airport study, which is being undertaken by McFarland and Johnson. And that's costing us about $48,000.
What is the scope of the 205 corridor study? What are you studying?
It's supposed to be primarily focusing on the Oneonta, the rail yard project from that area out to the interstate to roughly down where it goes to the end of the city limits. That small corridor section of congestion and traffic.
Okay. Jody, what's the update on the airport study? Do you know when that's going to be done?
It will be done December 23rd.
That's very precise, thank you.
I asked for it to be, I need the study done by the end of the year. I mean, it's been going on now for 5 years, and the state is saying, I mean, that on the first page, you saw the final studies that were submitted. There's a number of reasons for that. It's not that the previous staff, they were very talented. It's just that it takes sometimes so long to get these projects initiated and reimbursed. In the case of those 3 grants that were reimbursed, I had one project manager when I started with. I've been here a year now. I've had him leave, I had a different project manager, and now I've had a 3rd project manager. And they all asked for different things. So, and some of these studies just got delayed and delayed. So we're anticipating it'll be done by the end of the year. Richfield Springs, we're working again closely with Adela Products and Ruby Lake Glass on their expansion. We're proposing about a $5 million expansion. We're hoping that gets funded. We've also been heavily involved in kind of behind the scenes on the broadband Wi-Fi. When I first got here, I had a couple of board members ask me on this board, can you do anything to get Wi-Fi and broadband? We can't. But we're a facilitator. We've received a $250,000 grant from the Dormitory Authority. Actually, that project manager changed yesterday because we're filing paperwork with them right now. We also did receive a $50,000 grant that we transferred to the village of Cooperstown, and they're working on that portion of it. Work is being done by Midtel to install the Wi-Fi hotspots. In the town of Lawrence, Otsego Electric just spent about $4 million to bring broadband into that area. They're spending another $10 million north of Lawrence all the way up to Richfield Springs, and that's probably going to go to about $18 million. We meet with Otsego Electric probably every 3 weeks. They're extremely excited about what the work they're doing. Part of the thing that I did when I got here was I kind of put a hold on everything, so we didn't have any glamorous annual reports. It was basically an annual report that looked like this. This year we're going to be spending a little bit more money and actually doing a professional annual report that will include details on Otsego Electric's, what their Wi-Fi capability is. It's much more competitive than anything you've seen in New York State. It is really high speed. On page 21, yes.
I can tell you where I live. In Burlington, they've already run the lines, which I was not expecting for another year.
They have been extremely aggressive.
Yeah, and right into my pole. Right.
That's where they're starting in that area.
Yeah. But I wasn't expecting that.
That's nice.
I wish I could take credit for that, but Tim Johnson has actually been tremendous working with it. He's just been dynamic. And I give all the credit to them. They've done a tremendous job. They just kind of keep us informed. But
I was just going to say, Jody, I think they were saying it's 500 miles, and they write overall, I think, and they showed that it's not, they won't show the as a public document, but they have the map of their loop almost, right?
Right.
And it covers a significant portion of Otsego County.
Yeah. It's an incredible project. It has been, and like I said, Jim has been great to work with, and like I said, every 2 weeks he comes and asks who else he should be meeting with, who should be, and I would love to have him come here and do a presentation, because I think it would be really helpful for everybody to understand in detail what they're working on.
Jody, my understanding is the part of Otsego County that it doesn't cover is covered by the Spectrum agreement. Is that correct? And now that that has changed so radically, where are we? For the southeast corner, essentially, of the county.
We are working with Otsego Electric to enter into Spectrum's area.
Oh, good.
And clearly, if we have a business that needs high-speed internet, even if it's in a Spectrum area, they will run that line. Wow. But we are trying to improve everybody. On page 21, I'm sorry.
Jody, can you just mention also what Tim was relaying about cell phone coverage? Because I think, I mean, not just the broad piece of it.
When I drive up to Litchfield Springs, I lose all cell coverage, and that's going to be a major issue. That they are making really good headway on being able to have their internet coverage assist in the Wi-Fi and the cell phone coverage, and you're going to see much better coverage on cellular throughout the entire county within, I think, the next year. I don't know how much I want to.
No, I mean, there's not. Yeah, but they go hand in hand, right? That's what he definitely was implying.
Yes. So we're kind of excited about that, and. On page 21, probably one of the big things that Mr. Kelvin from the newspaper said we were terrible at, and we weren't able to do. And I'm glad to announce that in 2018, we now actually have the beginning of a Center for One-Stop Business Assistance. In our offices, besides the IDA, the Capital Resource Corporation, and the Rail Yard Local Development Corporation, we now have the New York Small Business Development Center. They have a full-time staff person from Bennington that everybody knows, Michelle Caton, who's there. The Otsego County Chamber of Commerce has moved into our offices. Southern Tier 8, which is formerly the Southern Tier East Regional Planning and Development Board out of Binghamton, has a full-time staff person in our office. And CADE moved in about 2 months ago, Center for Agriculture and Development and Entrepreneurialism. They've taken a mezzanine floor. So all of our organizations are in one area. We have staff meetings every 2 weeks. We have one this Friday, and one of the things we're going to be discussing this Friday is having an open house probably in November to invite everybody to see all of our agencies and what we do.
Who's the representative
I'm sorry?
Who's the representative from Southern Tier 8?
Jacqueline Quarter. She used to be an intern at the county planning department here. Big thing that we've seen already as a result of getting all of our agencies is workforce development and training programs. The Otsego County Chamber ran with Cindy Bloom Community College, use of a whole week session on training for startup businesses and entrepreneurial businesses. Fortunately, all of our expensive 5-year-old 20 number
and the county, and during the course of the discussion, it became very clear that the piece of, we had hoped, okay, backing up a little bit, the Otsego Now is going to be the one-stop shop for economic development in the county. So what became clear is that the small business, say projects 50,000 to 250,000, even 300,000, were not really in a position to be addressed by the structure of how the IDA or Otsego Now was being set up. So I guess my question is, and you had said, well, you know, IDAs deal with industry. So is there a way that this can work, that the IDA is actually looking at those smaller businesses and working with those smaller amounts, say 50,000 to 300,000?
Yes. Right now, there's two ways we do that. One is that the Broome County Industrial Development Agency for small manufacturing companies can make loans here as well, and we partner with them on bringing some of the smaller projects to them. In addition to that, I didn't talk about projects that we submitted grant applications on because they may not get funded. Right. But we did submit a grant application for a meat processing facility in Otsego. It's a small grant request. I think it's like $50,000. They're only going to employ maybe 1 or 2 more people. It's a very small operation, Steiner's meat processing facility. Anybody knows that? So we are working with them. We are currently doing considering a pilot agreement with a company, Decker Advertising out of Delhi, that's looking at opening up a small shop in Oneonta. And again, the total project cost is maybe $300,000. We originally were going to partner with Mohawk Valley Economic Development District that has a program for small businesses as well. We were going to split the dollar amounts. NBT Bank, I think, is actually financing that deal. But we are entertaining now a sales tax and pilot for them for a very small project. We're trying to, as evident by the groups that are in our offices, we're trying to work with everybody, whether it's farming, small businesses, retail. I will say that my board, though, there is a proposed hotel project in just north of Cooperstown in Hartwick. Thank you. We are treating that as a retail project. We are not treating that as so because of that, if they got a pilot agreement for that project, they would only get the standard 485B, which is any town or city can offer that same exemption, because our board in the past has viewed hotel projects as retail, not as major employers or anything. So some of the benefits are less if it's retail, such as our tax exemption programs, but we clearly can issue tax exemption and sales tax and certainly loans, and in the case of Steiner's, we're applying for right now an ESD grant for them. If we're successful in that, we're going to go to small cities and ask for a similar grant from small cities. Again, for 2 jobs, it's only $30,000, but we're willing to do the paperwork on $30,000.
So we can talk about this as we go ahead with deciding about that.
One thing we don't like to do, I don't like to do, is revolving loan funds. I've done them in the past, and they're always it's easier to go to Empire State Development or small cities with a micro program to get a straight grant for them. And even the state of New York, Empire State Development or Small Cities Community Development Program, 4 or 5 years ago they stopped they didn't want to fund revolving loan funds.
Right, and I think...
And they went to what they call these micro grants. So you actually give the company, because they don't want all the paperwork with it. It's a nightmare. I mean, to deal with a $25,000, $30,000 loan. So we're working with Mohawk Valley Economic Development District that has loan programs, the Broome County IDA that can make loans up here, the New York Business Development Corporation that can make loans as little as $10,000 in finance projects here. So as opposed to us directly getting involved in the loan programs, we'd rather have these organizations that we'll refer them to and help them with their applications, but we really, I'm trying to stay out of the loan business.
Thank you, Jody. The more we know, the better decisions we can make about these.
Yeah, and if somebody needs a loan, I mean, we're certainly going to help them try to get that. Our first focus, though, is a bank. We want them to go to the private sector first, and if the private sector is saying we're going to fund this, we're not going to send them someplace else.
I do think there's some confusion about one-stop shop. I mean, I think there's this perception that any business would be able to call the IDA, and I don't think that is what the IDA's purpose is. The IDA's purpose is not to help businesses with marketing, with their employee benefits.
Financing.
Yeah, just financing.
Financing.
But some of the conversations that continue to happen is this. Even with Karen, saying in our IJ meeting that small business with Michelle is sending people to Karen for microenterprise, but we don't even have a microenterprise grant program, and so there's some disconnects just even.
And also even with all of our organizations, the Small Business Development Center has a strict requirement that they keep all their information and clients confidential. So it's only until their client says they want to talk to us that are we aware of who they're working with. And the same with us. If somebody asks us to keep something confidential, we don't share it with any of the other offices. Now, where it has become a real one-stop shop is I constantly get phone calls now for the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, sorry about that, Jody. But I do think that, again, the more we know about what it is that we're talking about, the better prepared we'll be to make decisions regarding.
And like I said, this is, I know my honeymoon is over because I've been here a year. I am still learning. With all of our organizations, we're still feeling each other out in our organization of how can we interact and work together. If anybody has any suggestions as to what you think we're lacking on, except energy, that's going to be this new energy committee that's going to be formed.
More about that later.
I will be happy to give all my contact information with all these people that I've met with you guys.
Thank you, Jody.
But I mean, I'm open for suggestions, and my board is as well. I mean, one of the suggestions that came up, I was at a business meeting this morning with 7 or 8 business people at 7:30 before this meeting, and the 4-H group kind of reminded me of that. She says, here's your future workers. What they were saying was, we're losing too many young people. We train them. One guy says, I have a business where I give people licenses to train them to do bulldozers and heavy equipment, and the immediate thing they do is they go to Albany because they can pay better there. We lose our young people. And all of us old people sat around and tried to figure out why. And then we said, we should be meeting with the high schools, BOCES, and State University at Hartwick to the senior classes and the junior classes and saying, what can we do to keep you here? And so they tasked me with arranging those meetings. That's an area that we weren't involved in the past that we're going to be. And we're open to suggestions.
I appreciate you saying again and again that you're not the energy folks, and I agree. I get it. But we still have a $17 million CFA out for a decompression station. And that concerns me. And one of the things that concerns me is that it was done by the IDA. And as far as I can tell, there are no renewable alternatives considered. The first thing I thought of was geothermal. There's not a geothermal company, as far as I can tell, on your list of energy contacts here. I understand that won't heat your interruptibles completely, but it will provide tremendous supplemental heating, and it will require more electricity for the fans and the air compressors. You put solar on all those flat roofs at Suco and Fox, and you're in business. You got to win, win, win. Whereas now we've got a big fight going on. Providing the opportunity for new industries in either Pony Farm or the rail yard to consider, and that perhaps be funded by geothermal might provide some incentive, and would obviate the need for this horrible thing that we're thinking of. The other thing is, in terms of directions to go, economic development, and I've said this before, I'll keep saying it, we have industries in this county that are begging for workers, and have been, whether the unemployment rate is high or low, doesn't matter. Personal service, hospitality, agriculture, and developing a workforce for those industries so that we can get workers for those industries incentivized and get them good jobs here and at home. Keeping them here is I think it's essential. And the other thing is, of course, housing. And we understand the housing issue. There's some work being done on that, but it's got a long way to go before we can offer a large, well-trained workforce enough housing for them to want to come here. So.
Boy, that's a big question.
Well, yeah.
Really quickly.
And I'm sorry, it's not a question. You asked for suggestions, and so I really don't need you to solve that problem.
No.
Because I don't think
really quickly, you're correct. I made a mistake. The mistake I made was when we had this. We realized that we had both an electric and a gas issue. We said, whose responsibility is this? We went to the utility, NICE, and we said, you've got to figure out how to solve this problem. So this is their solution. To be honest, we didn't look at other solutions until the last 3 months and says, well, what about wind? What about solar? What about LNG? Apparently they're safer trucks than CNG trucks, but I'll defer that to the experts. So that we're looking at that now. I'm somewhat not at liberty because we've been threatened with a lawsuit. So I've been told that by Otsego 2000. So I've been told I can't speak a lot about the project until the attorneys review everything. But I will say that when I talked to, how I ended up talking to General Electric yesterday was one of these business people sent me a newspaper and said, have you talked to GE? They've got this new solar battery system that, so I talked to the lead scientist on it yesterday, and she said, well, it's supplemental. It can't power your industrial park. She goes, look outside and look at the rain. She goes, it's not going to work on a day like that. And in January, and I never knew this, in January when the equator is tilted, you're not going to get any power off these unless you have a tremendous solar array. And I'm like,
oh, that's not, I can't let that go by. But I can show you data from my house, from the panels on my house, January to December 21st,
I'm just saying that,
generating power.
That's what she told me. Yesterday.
Okay, that's not true.
So, and again, that's why I'd rather have an energy group. I don't want to know any of these things. I don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
With respect to jobs, we've had a series of discussions in the last 3 or 4 weeks on that there are roughly anywhere between 300 to 500, depending on what radius you go, vacancies. We had a discussion on it for the last 2 days in heat, saying, is that Otsego now's responsibility, or is that the Workforce Development Board's responsibility? And the agreement, the decision was to ask the Workforce Development Board to come in and explain why we aren't filling these jobs. What do we have to do to fill those jobs? Because those jobs are creating a $20 to $30 million deficit in our county on those payrolls and on the sales and the homes. We'd be $20 million, $30 million richer in our county if those jobs were filled. But we don't know, and my board, Just like there's some controversy on the airport, doesn't want me to be the airport manager, doesn't want me to be the workforce development director.
I don't expect you to answer these questions. I'm just throwing out ideas for CFAs, for directions to go, for our energy interest, or somewhere down those roads, I think.
And we are trying to address those. We are working with the mayor in the city of Oneonta for new housing development. I'm pleased to report that he's been looking at moderate income housing development, not low income housing. The last developer we met, we're really encouraged with that project. And in Hartwick Seminary, there's ability, if there's water and sewer district created there for additional housing perhaps. That's one of the problems with retail development, is that you can't get the retail to go there unless you have an increased population.
Kind of first the comment, I was like, I wanted to thank you for all your hard work on with Corning. Being able to negotiate the agreement to keep 175 jobs there is really quite outstanding, considering how small of a staff you have, so that's pretty amazing. The second thing has to do with more of a suggestion. Monroe County Community College, they have like a kind of an economic development arm, which is kind of relatively unique compared to other community colleges, and what they've done is they've gathered a lot of labor force data to analyze gaps in employment, potential pay rates, etc. It's pretty cool. I can send you the link to the website later, but I think that they work with surrounding counties to gather that data, find where there are gaps, and kind of identify pay rates, and kind of to allow us to figure out, are we paying a competitive wage in neighboring areas? What kind of job openings do we have, and how should we be orienting future CFA proposals to that? So I wonder if it would be worth even reaching out to them and see if they would include Otsego.
I'm a firm believer in not trying to reinvent the wheel. I've been studying Broome County. Broome County has been doing just finished a housing study. They also did a recruitment study because they have the same problem. They have like 800 vacancies in the Broome County area, and they're saying we have the same problem. So they came out with it's like a 1,500-page report. I'm reluctant because Megan will shoot me if I print that off. But they've got a lot of good ideas in that. That's one of the reasons we brought the Southern Tier in, is that this is a regional issue. It's not just Oneonta, it's not just Otsego County, it's Broome County, it's Tioga County. We all have the same problem, and we're not working together to solve it. I have met with ISD, computer people. They're working on a proposal to develop a linked database for job searches, so that one of the big issues we've heard from the hospital and the colleges is that they can find employment perhaps for their top executives, but their spouses can't find employment here. So we're trying to come up with a program that would link all of those types of jobs in one database, so that people who are looking to move here can find jobs for their spouses as well. And it's a big problem. I don't want to solve any of these. I mean, I want to solve them all, but I don't want to be. My expertise is taking somebody else's plan and saying, that's a good idea, why aren't we doing that here? I'm not creative. I'm good at taking other people's ideas and making them happen. So I'd be happy to.
Great, certainly. I'll also welcome IDA's involvement with the Energy Task Force. That'd be wonderful to have.
If I'm going to have to sit in, I'd love to. If I'm not, that's fine. I've been spending way too much time on this. And I don't have the, I met with somebody from Otsego 2000, I think, on the board of directors, also is on the city of Oneonta's environmental review board. He came to talk to me about geothermal, and he's going to try to arrange a meeting with somebody that is an expert in that with me, but I don't know anything about it. I don't think that I should know anything about it. That should be an energy person. Anybody want to do the energy zone? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jody.
Okay, shared services initiative. As you all know, we voted on and approved our shared services plan last month, and Eric is here to give us an update on how that plan's been finalized. Anything else? Just in addition to the meeting on the transportation facility, one of the things that we asked them about was a couple of the companies did have experience with geothermal and solar capabilities for heating the transportation facility. That's the time to do it when you're doing construction and you're doing all that earth moving. So the hope is that geothermal and solar would be a component of that facility.
And then I just wanted to emphasize the first point that Representative Wilbur made about vacant positions for our, our plow truck operators. Bill has said to us he has 6 vacant positions right now going into plow season, and they're having a very difficult time finding people with a CDL license. And it's a shortage everywhere, but we as a county need to know that we are 6 people short, and it's either going to be a lot of overtime or a closing down roads.
They've been vacant. They've not responded for a while. They've been out there for a while, as I understand it. Yeah.
So if you know of anybody with a CDL license,
Wants to get
time to twist their arm.
What are they paying?
I don't know. It's a problem.
I can't remember.
That's why you can't get people.
We just, we have a
It's 16 something now.
The thought crossed my mind the other day, it's not often that happens, but no. Maybe we ought to use social media possibly as some type of a help here, maybe put together some type of announcement that we're looking for people and get people to share it, out with as many people.
I think that was discussed. I don't know if it's been done.
It has been done, actually. I saw it. I caught one.
As part of the shared services initiative, maybe we can go back out to the towns that used to plow our roads and declined to, and see, I mean, they have drivers with CDLs there. And,
well, that's part of the issue, is they're having the same issues that we are finding help. That's part of the problem.
I know, like Lawrence took on more.
Same issue.
Yeah.
They're
Middlefield, I think, is down to 2 people. They used to have 6. They're going to have 2 for the past day. Hired a couple, and they're making less. After a month, they quit.
They don't like the hours.
Okay. IGA, Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. IGA committee met on September 11th at 9 o'clock. Part of our meeting, you kind of heard a recap of. We had Jody come in, Jody Zagrebski from the IDA. He explained very much what he explained to our group this morning on what constitutes the IDA, the relationship between the Otsego County Capital Resource Corporation, the Oneonta Rail Yards Corporation, and the Industrial Development Agency. So today was actually a great expansion on that topic to get down into the details on specific projects, which I really appreciated hearing. We also had the Cooperstown Chamber of Commerce come in to request a $4,000 subsidy for their staffing, which we approved. Cornell Cooperative Extension came in, even though we are not their parent committee, to bring in the discussion on economic development, which is always good to hear, especially with regards to agriculture in the county. They had the Ag Implementation Specialist, we talk about, here it comes up again, had begun just before she left a Farm Source and Thrive program app that farmers can participate in, and she actually came out to our greenhouse and sat down with me and explained the whole process on how it would work. So I'll know, I can judge the success of the new person when they call me to see how it's going. So I'm just letting you know that it is a great way to use social media to get farmers in contact with customers. And I certainly hope that piece of the Ag Farmland Protection Plan is continued through the Ag Implementation Specialist. He also did discuss their budget and what they would like to request for the position for next year. That is still in discussion. Then we went into another big portion of our meeting was the energy discussion with Irene Weiser from the town of Carolyn in Tompkins County. And I feel that this was a great jumping off point for discussing energy within the county. Jody talked about it on multiple occasions this morning. And I feel that we're poised to begin the discussion of what has proven to be an issue that is not moving ahead. It's on one track, and we want to explore possible tracks, a pathway to moving ahead with regards to providing businesses and development in the county, homeowners, everyone. I think the more we know about this topic, the better decisions we can all make. And it's my hope that after listening to Irene's talk and discussing it in committee extensively, that the assessment of our energy supply and demand within the county is definitely worthy of setting up an assessment team. I know that whatever term you use dictates what you can or cannot do, so I kind of shying away from task force, but I'm not sure why. But we want to assess the situation, and it was decided that at the committee level that we did want to go ahead with this. We have county board representation, Otsego County Conservation Association representation, and city and town of Oneonta representation on a 5-person leadership team that will build out the discussion, pull in other people with expertise, and our hope is to really assess what the true picture is. NYSEG would be called upon to provide the details of what actually is going on with the product that they supply to us. Those are just hopes, but the reality is that this leadership team would like to be seated and start working on this topic as soon as we can do it. So I just wanted to, I'm not sure if we need to have the full approval of the board. I don't know the protocol exactly, but that's what our hope is. We did meet again on September 27th, and we approved the low bid for the tiny homes materials, which we reapproved in admin this morning. We discussed the community center design bid, changing gears back to the other part of the IGA, for the architectural design for the tiny homes community center, and that has been put back to further discussion, and hopefully we will have a final decision on that at our October meeting. Now, another topic that I'm very excited about is county governance. The workshop with Steve Aquario, who's the Executive Director of the New York State Association of Counties, has been scheduled for November 1st from 10 to 2. He will be bringing a staff person down from Albany with him and is hoping to kind of guide us into setting a vision for what we would like to do with regard to county governance. And I've had some RSVPs. I would really encourage all of you to carve out the time, 4 hours on November 1st from 10 to 2, regardless of if you think that, you know, we want to hear everyone's ideas on this. It's something that has to, in order for whatever we do to be successful, we have to know what we're dealing with, and what our ideas are as a group will guide our decision going forward on this topic. And I really would like for everyone to come on November 1st from 10 to 2. Our next meeting is the 9th of October, Tuesday at 9 a.m. And our next governance meeting is the 30th at 9 a.m. And I'm open to any questions, comments. Liz?
Well, do we need to set a deadline for when they can RSVP for the workshop so we have that information?
Well, Steve Aquario needs to know names and numbers, so he's going to be bringing down materials with him, so he needs to know. He told me, or his staff person told me, that there is not a number, a threshold that we need to reach. He's
Right.
going to come down and do the workshop with us, so he just needs to know names and how many to expect.
So when do you think he needs to know that by? So we can give these people like a little...
I would like to be able to tell them by the 30th. Well, no, that he's coming on the 1st. That would be one day in between. I think that would be enough. Yeah. So by our meeting on the 30th, I would hope that everyone would have let us know, and hopefully you'll be choosing to come. Kathy, oh wait, I think that Gary had his hand up first.
Just a quick question, are we including department heads in this meeting?
It's county board representatives at this point.
Are we able to tape the meeting so that representatives that can't attend could watch on videotape?
I hadn't explored that opportunity, that possibility, but I would hope that you could come in person.
Oh, I'm going to come, but
oh, okay, yeah.
It's,
well, I'll have to
people
talk.
that are not around, if he doesn't have anything proprietary, we pay to be in that organization, so maybe we could tape it.
Yeah, I'll check with Steve, and then I'll check with Brian. We'll see what we can do. Sure, Kathy, and I'm very glad to hear that you're going to come. I think that's great.
Did you get my email?
Somehow I must have missed it. When did you send it? I did.
Days ago?
Oh. I got.
Yeah, I think I saw it yesterday.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yesterday I was trying to do work at my other job yesterday.
Good luck.
Yeah. So anyway, Dan.
I just wanted to thank you and Michelle for taking the initial steps forward on setting up the leadership committee for the energy plan. So thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. Thank you. I'm hoping that it will definitely reap good benefit to our county.
Okay, Human Services Representative Kutnick.
These new chairs. Totally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met on September 17th and spent a good part of our time, I don't know, perhaps it was the majority of our time, on the budget. Second time we'd gone through, we had updates and looking back on the budget as a whole. That's pretty much the procedure we've done every year, and there are really no extraordinary or unusual things to report there. Some of these items are very simple to predict, and others are very, very difficult. It all depends on whether one, hundreds of thousands of dollars could depend on whether one individual is placed in a particular setting in circumstances that are completely out of our control. So our budget is always kind of interesting. Budget processes are kind of interesting in that case. Declared October 2018 is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. There are activities that will be provided in collaboration with that. And those are in the minutes. Fiscal situation looks good. Approved non-mandated trainings. Approved filling some vacancies. A number of people have stolen my thunder today about ground being broken for the tiny homes project. But we're all pretty happy about that. Lots of good things happening there. Sources of funding from a lot of different areas, thanks to some really creative work and thought by lots of different department heads and board members. So that's going well. It says here that Eve and I met with Andrew Marietta regarding the strategic plan. I was there for about 5 minutes and I had another meeting to go to, so it was Andrew and Eve that worked on that department's, Human Services Department's, PSS's contribution to the strategic plan. and we will work through that as it comes along. We talked about a media article regarding Kids on Night. As you know, we are contracting out some of our preventive services. I've mentioned that actually a number of times. And somehow in one of the papers, it was stated that the Kids Oneida caseworkers who we're contracting for will be making $75,000 a year. And the actual accurate facts are that includes all of the fringes. So nobody needs to jump, quit their day job and jump to that. As you know, that's probably what most of our mid-level employees cost us when we had the fringes. So next meeting is Thursday, October 18th at 9:30 a.m. and we're going to meet in the Meadows. So if you're planning to come, meet us in the Meadows, because as you know, DSS has staff at both places, and we're now moving back and forth for their convenience.